The house was too quiet. No hum of the refrigerator, no ticking of the clock on the wall, nothing. Just silence. And in that silence, I could feel the weight of something unspoken hanging in the air. It had been a long evening, longer than usual. The kind of evening where you can't shake the feeling that something is off, but you're not sure exactly what. You try to focus on the mundane things, cleaning up after dinner, folding the laundry, but your mind keeps drifting, replaying the same thought over and over. What's happening? I wasn't sure when I started noticing the signs. The little things that seemed insignificant at first, but, over time, began to add up. Miriam's late nights, her unexplained absences, the way she started brushing off simple questions, her increasingly distant demeanor. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was just paranoid. But paranoia has a way of becoming reality, doesn't it? That night, she had gone out with her boss, Edward. She'd mentioned it casually, like it was no big deal, but there was something in her tone that made me pause. She had sounded almost too calm, too collected. I didn't know why, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I didn't hear the car pull up. No sound of the door opening. It was like she had just materialized in the living room, her presence sudden and unsettling. I glanced up from the couch, where I had been scrolling mindlessly through my phone. She didn't meet my eyes immediately. Instead, she looked around the room, her gaze flicking over the furniture, the walls, almost like she was searching for something. I stood up, trying to sound casual. "Hey, you're back late. Dinner go well?" Her response was delayed, like she hadn't quite heard me. She blinked twice before glancing toward me. Yeah, everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. I could tell. There was something about the way she said it, the way her voice lacked the warmth it usually had when she spoke to me. It was as though she was speaking to a stranger, a necessary formality. The distance between us had become palpable. I took a step toward her. "Miriam, are you okay?" For a moment, she didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at the floor, as if the question hadn't reached her. Then she glanced up, and for the first time all night, I saw something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. It was confusion, but not the kind of confusion that comes from miscommunication or misunderstandings. This was a deeper, more unsettling kind of confusion. I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know what's going on anymore." I wasn't sure how to react. This wasn't the Miriam I knew. She was the one who always had everything under control, the one who would never let anything, or anyone, shake her. This wasn't her. But there was more. I could feel it, and it made my stomach churn. "Miriam," I began again, my voice trembling slightly. "What do you mean? What's going on?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking. "I came home tonight, and everything's gone. Every trace of me, of us. It's like you erased it all." My heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" She turned her gaze toward the kitchen, then the hallway leading to the bedroom. "The photos, the things we've collected over the years. Where are they? Where did they go?" She was almost pleading now, her eyes wide with something that felt like panic. "Why would you do this?" I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. I didn't move anything. "What are you talking about?" But it was true. The more I thought about it, the more I realized. She was right. There was something different. The house felt emptier, more hollow. The pictures we had taken together, the little knickknacks that had accumulated over the years, the framed memories we had shared, all of it was gone. I hadn't touched any of it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "I didn't touch anything, Miriam," I said, but my voice didn't sound convincing, even to myself. She shook her head slowly, her fingers twitching as though she didn't know where to start. "Don't lie to me. It's gone. All of it." I took a step forward, trying to close the space between us. "Listen, I don't know what's going on, but I didn't do this. I haven't moved anything." She backed away from me, her face flushed, her breathing shallow. "I'm not lying. I know what I saw. I saw the empty frames on the walls, the spaces where the pictures used to be. Where are they? Why would you take them down without saying anything?" My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. I didn't know how to explain what she was seeing. Maybe it's just a mistake," I suggested weakly, though I didn't believe my own words. She wasn't listening anymore. She turned abruptly, walking toward the bedroom. I could hear her rummaging through the drawers, her frustration growing with every second. The sound of her searching, the frantic pulling of clothing from drawers, the slamming of closet doors, filled the silence that had settled between us. I stood frozen, paralyzed by the growing sense of dread that seemed to press down on me. What was happening? Why couldn't I remember moving anything? Why couldn't I explain this? I heard her voice again, this time almost a whisper. Where's my favorite necklace? The one you gave me last year? My throat tightened. I had no idea. The truth was, I didn't even remember the last time I had seen it. I haven't seen it, I said, my voice cracking. She came back into the living room, her eyes wide with disbelief. You don't remember? You don't even remember where it is? I didn't know how to answer that. Because the truth was, I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember moving the pictures. I didn't remember taking anything. And worse, she was right. There was something missing. Something had been erased. And in that moment, I realized that the things that had always kept us connected, those small, seemingly insignificant moments, had begun to disappear. What had happened to us? What had happened to me? The weight of the silence between us felt unbearable. Neither of us said anything. And in the absence of words, the truth was clear. Something had changed. Something had been taken. But the real question was, who took it? The tension in the room was suffocating. Miriam stood there, staring at me as if trying to solve a puzzle she had no pieces for. I could see her lips trembling, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I can't believe this, she muttered, her voice breaking. Why would you do this? Why would you erase our life like it meant nothing? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could I say? I didn't remember moving a single thing. It felt like I was trapped in someone else's nightmare, watching from the outside, unable to wake up. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a brief moment, I questioned whether I had lost my mind. Had I done it? Was I hiding something from myself? Miriam, I swear, I said, my voice shaky. I didn't touch anything. I haven't moved a single thing. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed myself. The longer I stood there, the more the doubt gnawed at me. Could I have done something without realizing it? Had I been so distant, so caught up in my own thoughts, that I had somehow erased our memories without even noticing? She didn't respond right away. She just kept staring at me, as if waiting for me to crack, for the truth to spill out of me. The silence between us was unbearable. It felt like we were standing on the edge of a precipice, and with each passing second, I was getting closer to falling. Miriam turned away from me, heading toward the hallway again. This time, I followed her, my steps hesitant, unsure. Miriam, I called, my voice barely above a whisper. Please, let's talk about this. She didn't stop. Instead, she opened the closet door, yanking at the hangers with such force that the clothes inside began to fall, one after another. I watched her tear through everything, her dresses, jackets, shirts, like she was looking for something specific, something I couldn't see. Her face was flushed, her movements erratic. Then, out of nowhere, she stopped. She stood still, her eyes locked on something at the back of the closet. I couldn't see what it was, but I saw the look on her face. It was a mixture of shock and recognition. Where did you put it? She asked, almost whispering, though her voice was filled with a growing sense of panic. Where is my ring? My stomach dropped. My mind raced. The engagement ring. The one I had given her 3 years ago, the symbol of everything we had built together. The one piece of jewelry that meant more to us than anything else. I had never seen her take it off, not once. Yet now, she was asking for it, as if it had vanished into thin air. I don't know. I stammered, my voice tight. I didn't move it. I haven't seen it. She spun around to face me, her eyes wild. Don't lie to me, she screamed, her voice breaking. I'm not stupid. I know what I saw. It was right here, in the drawer. I kept it in that box. But now it's gone, and you can't even remember where it is. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Miriam, I'm not lying. I swear to you, I haven't touched anything. But the way she looked at me, like I was the stranger, not her, sent a chill down my spine. She took a step back, her eyes still wide with disbelief, and I could see the tears beginning to form, threatening to fall. I don't even know who you are anymore, she whispered, the words laced with hurt and betrayal. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say. I had no answers. I had no explanation for what was happening. All I knew was that Miriam was slipping away, and I couldn't find a way to stop it. The air between us felt charged now, thick with unsaid things, with accusations neither of us had voiced yet. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't looking at me the same way anymore. Something had shifted, something irrevocable, and I wasn't sure if I could fix it. She turned her back to me again, walking toward the hallway, and this time I didn't follow. I couldn't. I needed space to think, to process what was happening. I needed to understand how we had arrived at this moment. As I stood there in the quiet, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing her. Like something was slipping through my fingers, something I couldn't hold on to anymore. And the worst part was, I had no idea what it was, or how to get it back. I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. I had to figure this out. I had to understand what was going on. Because if I didn't, I might lose everything. But as I sat there, trying to calm my thoughts, something else hit me. Something I hadn't considered before. What if I wasn't the one who had changed? What if Miriam had been hiding something from me all along? What if there was more to this story than I could see? The thought made my blood run cold. Had I missed the signs? Was there something she wasn't telling me? Something I wasn't ready to face? I tried to shake the thought, but it lingered, gnawing at the back of my mind. And as I sat there, the room feeling colder and colder, I realized one terrifying thing. I had no idea what was real anymore. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the empty space where our memories used to live. Empty frames, empty shelves, and that sinking feeling in my gut that told me everything was changing. The silence was deafening. Miriam had gone upstairs after the argument, and I hadn't heard a sound from her since. The only noise was the occasional creak of the house settling, each one like a reminder of how unstable everything felt. I kept replaying the same thoughts over and over. What was happening? Why was she acting like this? But every time I tried to put the pieces together, they slipped through my fingers like sand. The more I thought about it, the more I began to question everything. The way we had been drifting apart, the way she'd started acting distant, the missing photographs, the ring that vanished without a trace. It was all starting to feel too much like something deliberate, and that terrified me. I stood up, the weight of the uncertainty pressing on me. I needed answers. I couldn't just sit around anymore, waiting for her to tell me what was going on. I had to confront this head-on. I walked upstairs, my footsteps slow and hesitant, the hallway feeling longer than usual, as if it stretched on forever. I reached our bedroom door, and for a moment, I hesitated. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe this was just some misunderstanding, some odd phase we were going through. I took a deep breath and knocked. Miriam? I called, my voice soft, unsure. Can we talk? There was no immediate answer, just silence. I waited for a few seconds, feeling my heart race in my chest. Maybe she didn't want to talk. Maybe she was too angry or hurt to deal with me right now. But I couldn't give up. Not now. Not when everything felt like it was unraveling. I knocked again, this time louder. Miriam. Still nothing. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, but no response from her. I turned the knob, my hand trembling slightly. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside, only to be greeted by an empty room. I blinked. The bed was neatly made, the clothes in the dresser organized as usual. But something about the room felt off. The air was thick, almost stifling. And that's when I noticed it. The drawers were slightly ajar, the closet door wasn't fully closed. Miriam's things were scattered on the floor, clothes half folded, her shoes knocked aside in a hurry. It was like she'd been in here, and then left in a panic. My heart dropped into my stomach as I scanned the room. The most disturbing part? The dresser. There, at the center of it all, was a photograph of us. One of the few that had been left behind. But it wasn't one of the happy ones. No, it was the one where we were at the beach, the one where Miriam's expression wasn't the bright, smiling one I remembered. In this photo, she was looking off to the side, her eyes distant, her smile forced. I had never paid attention to that detail before. Now, seeing it in the dim light of the room, I felt a wave of unease. I walked over to the dresser, my hands shaking as I picked up the photo. Why would Miriam leave this one out? Why leave the most uncomfortable image of us behind? Something didn't add up. I turned it over, half expecting to find something written on the back, but there was nothing. Just the blank surface of the frame staring back at me. I set the photo down and walked over to the bed, my thoughts racing. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just some weird phase she was going through, some breakdown of communication between us. But the longer I stayed in this room, the more I felt the weight of everything that had gone wrong. It wasn't just the missing photos. It wasn't just the ring or the distant behavior. It was the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us, and I had no idea how to fix it. I turned toward the door, preparing to leave when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure if it was Miriam or someone else. I quickly darted back to the doorway, my breath catching in my chest. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. I stood frozen, my mind racing. What if she had come back in to find me? What if she was furious, ready to yell, to accuse me of something I hadn't done? I wasn't ready for that. But the door didn't open. The footsteps remained, right there in the hallway, as if waiting for something. I took a tentative step toward the door, my eyes darting between the hallway and the room behind me. Suddenly, the air felt heavier, like something was about to happen. I reached for the doorknob, my hand cold, and slowly opened the door, just a crack. Miriam. I called again, my voice shaky. No answer. I opened the door wider, peering down the hallway, but there was no one there. Just the faint sound of the floorboards creaking, the quiet hum of the house settling around me. Confusion gnawed at me. I stepped into the hallway, glancing both ways, but it was empty. Had I imagined it? Had I misheard the footsteps? I didn't know anymore. I turned back toward the bedroom, and just as I did, I saw it. On the floor, beside the dresser, was a small, folded piece of paper. My heart stopped. There was no way I could have missed it before. The paper was so perfectly placed, as though it had been deliberately left there for me to find. I picked it up slowly, unfolding it with trembling fingers. The message was short, scrawled hastily, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. I know what you did. It's too late to fix it now. I stood there, holding the note in disbelief as the words sank in. Who wrote this? And what did they mean by, I know what you did? My mind raced with possibilities, but nothing made sense. The feeling that had been creeping under my skin since Miriam came home, something dark and inexplicable, was now undeniable. I wasn't sure what was happening anymore, but I knew one thing for certain. Nothing was as it seemed, and I was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole really went. The note shook in my hand as I stood there, staring at the words. I know what you did. It's too late to fix it now. The message was brief, yet it felt like a punch to the gut. Who wrote it? Was it Miriam? Or someone else? My mind swirled with 1,000 questions, none of them making any sense. What had I done? What was it that I couldn't fix? My thoughts raced faster than I could catch them, and for a moment, I felt completely lost. I stood frozen in the hallway, the silence around me thick with dread. It was like the house had become a different place, cold, oppressive, unfamiliar. Every shadow seemed darker, every creak of the floorboards louder, like the house itself was closing in on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something important, was slipping away. Miriam was upstairs, and I hadn't seen her since the argument earlier, but now, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see her at all. I turned the note over in my hand, hoping to find some clue on the back, but there was nothing, no signature, no trace of who could have written it. I felt like I was unraveling, like every thread of my life was slowly being pulled apart, and I couldn't stop it. After what felt like an eternity of standing there in the hallway, I forced myself to move. The note didn't change anything. I needed to confront Miriam. She had to know something. Maybe this was all just a misunderstanding, but if not, if something more sinister was going on, I had to find out. I slowly walked up the stairs, my heart beating in my throat. The house felt so silent now, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for the next step in whatever twisted game was unfolding around me. When I reached the top, I hesitated at the doorway to the bedroom, afraid of what I might find or not find. But I couldn't just stand there. I had to face it. I opened the door quietly, trying not to disturb the stillness. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. Miriam was sitting at the edge of the bed, her head down, her face hidden in her hands. She looked so small, so fragile, like someone who had been beaten down by a force greater than themselves. It broke my heart to see her like this, but I couldn't ignore what was happening. Not anymore. Miriam, I whispered, stepping into the room. We need to talk. She didn't move at first. She just sat there, shoulders hunched, not responding. I could feel the distance between us, like a wall made of unspoken words and unanswered questions. I walked over to the bed, sitting down beside her, and when I reached out to touch her shoulder, she flinched. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Miriam, please. What is all this? The photos, the ring, the note. What are you hiding from me? For a long time, she didn't answer. The air in the room was thick with tension, and every second that passed felt like an eternity. Then, finally, she lifted her head, but when she looked at me, it wasn't the look I expected. There was something in her eyes, a coldness, a detachment, that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something darker, something I couldn't name. You don't get it, do you? She said, her voice low, almost a whisper. You never really understood. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Understood what? Her lips trembled slightly, as if she was struggling to say the words, and then, finally, she spoke. All this time, you've been blind. To everything. To what's really going on. You never really saw me. Not truly. You were too busy, too distracted, to notice when I started to fade away. She paused, her eyes narrowing. And now it's too late. My heart pounded in my chest. What do you mean too late? I asked, my voice shaking. Miriam, you're scaring me. What's going on? She didn't answer at first. Instead, she turned away from me, her gaze drifting toward the window. The silence between us felt suffocating, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I didn't know how to fix this, how to make things right. But I had to try. Miriam, I said, my voice more urgent now. Please, talk to me. What are you hiding? What's really happening? She finally turned back to me, her eyes colder than ever. You really want to know? She asked, her voice sharp, almost bitter. Fine, I'll tell you. Everything. My breath caught in my throat as she stood up from the bed, pacing around the room. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in around me. Miriam's movements were quick, almost frantic, and I could see the tension in her shoulders, in her clenched fists. It was like she was trying to hold something back, something powerful and dangerous. And as she began to speak, I realized that nothing in this house, nothing in my life, was what I thought it was. Do you remember when I first started working with Edward? She asked, her voice low but steady. How you didn't think much of it. How you were so sure I was just doing my job, that it was nothing to worry about. I nodded slowly, unsure of where this was going. Yeah, I didn't think anything was wrong. Her eyes darkened. You were wrong. She stepped closer to me, her voice now a harsh whisper. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized. I didn't need you. Not like I thought I did. Edward understood me in ways you never did. He saw me, really saw me, in ways you never could. She paused, taking a shaky breath. And that's when it started. The distance between us. The quiet separation. But you were too busy, too blind, to notice. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Miriam, no, my voice faltered. Are you saying, is this about him? Did you and Edward? She held up a hand, cutting me off. No, it's not about that, she said quickly. It's not about him. It's about you. It's always been about you. You've been so caught up in your own world, in your own insecurities, that you never once looked at me, really looked at me, and saw what I needed, what I wanted. And now everything's falling apart. Because of you. I felt the weight of her words crush me. For the first time in years, I felt small, insignificant, like nothing I had done had mattered. Miriam wasn't angry at me. She was broken in a way I couldn't fix, in a way I didn't understand. The things I had ignored, the little signs I had brushed off, were now standing in front of me like a mountain I couldn't climb. I didn't know. I whispered, my voice barely audible. Miriam's face softened for a moment, but then, just as quickly, the coldness returned. I don't expect you to understand now, but it's too late for us, for everything. You were never really here. I didn't know how to respond to that. What could I say? What could I do? As she turned away from me, walking toward the door, I felt a deep, gnawing emptiness settle in my chest. Miriam wasn't the person I thought she was, and neither was I. I had spent so much time believing in things that weren't real, things I wanted to be true, but now I saw the truth for what it was. And the truth was ugly. It was painful, and it was too late to change it. I watched her leave the room, her silhouette fading into the darkness of the hallway, and I realized, deep down, that everything I thought I knew about our relationship, about Miriam, about myself, had been a lie. The house, once a home, now felt like a prison, and I was trapped, with no way out. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the silence in the room louder than any words could ever be. Miriam had walked out, and I hadn't moved an inch. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, pressing down on me with an almost physical force. You were never really here. Those words replayed in my mind over and over, like an incessant drumbeat, and with each repetition, the truth of them settled deeper in my chest. I had failed. In ways I didn't even know existed. I had failed her, and I hadn't even seen it coming. The house felt empty now. It wasn't just the lack of noise. It was as if everything, every memory, every moment we had shared, had been stripped away, leaving only a hollow shell behind. I wanted to chase after her, to beg her to stay, to tell her that I could fix this. But how could I fix something when I didn't even understand what was broken? I stood up, my legs unsteady, the weight of everything crushing down on me. I stumbled to the living room, trying to shake the fog in my mind, but it was useless. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping through my fingers, that I was losing control in a way I couldn't explain. Miriam's words echoed in my head, but so did the note I had found earlier. I know what you did. It's too late to fix it now. The note had been a threat, a warning, and now I was certain that whatever this was, it wasn't just between Miriam and me anymore. There were other forces at play, things I couldn't see, things I couldn't control. I walked to the window, trying to steady my breath, looking out at the street below. The world outside was calm, quiet, normal, nothing like the chaos swirling in my mind. I needed answers. I needed to understand what had happened, why Miriam was acting this way, and what the hell was going on with the note. It was all connected. I could feel it in my bones. But how? I turned away from the window and looked around the living room. The shadows seemed to stretch longer now, the once familiar space now feeling foreign. The pictures that used to hang on the walls were gone, the shelves empty, and the silence seemed to swallow everything whole. My eyes landed on the coffee table, still untouched from earlier, still holding the remnants of our last evening together. The empty wine glasses, the half-finished dinner plates, the remnants of a life that now felt like a distant memory. It struck me then. Miriam hadn't just been taking down pictures. She hadn't just been hiding things. She had been erasing everything we had built, as if it were nothing but a mistake. I grabbed my phone from the table, scrolling through it absent-mindedly. But nothing. No messages. No calls. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over her contact. I wanted to call her, to ask her what the hell was going on, but I didn't know what I would say. What could I say? The walls between us felt insurmountable. Miriam had been right. I had been blind to everything. And now, it was too late to fix it. As I stared at the phone, a thought occurred to me, a sudden, sharp realization that made my pulse quicken. The note, the words, "It's too late to fix it now." Was it a threat, or was it a warning? And who could have written it? Miriam? Or was there someone else involved in this twisted game? I shook my head, trying to focus. There was no use in guessing. I needed to take action. I had to find out who had written that note. I had to find out what was going on before it was too late. I couldn't let this happen, couldn't let everything crumble without even understanding why. Miriam wasn't the only one hiding something. I could feel it now. There was something else lurking in the shadows. Something dangerous. I grabbed my jacket from the couch and walked out of the house, the cold night air hitting my face like a slap. It felt good, in a way. The coolness, the crispness of the evening, made me feel like I could breathe again. But it didn't last long. As soon as I stepped into the street, I felt the weight of the world settle back on my shoulders. The note, the missing memories. Miriam. I had to find out the truth. I walked to my car, my mind racing. There had to be something I was missing, something that connected all the dots. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever Miriam had been hiding, whatever had been so carefully hidden in plain sight, was closer than I realized. I just had to find it. I drove for what felt like hours, but it was probably only minutes. The streets blurred by in a haze, and my thoughts were tangled, messy, unable to form anything coherent. It was like I was chasing shadows, running from something I couldn't see. I needed answers. I needed to know if Miriam had been telling the truth, or if I had missed something that could explain all of this. I needed to know if the person who wrote that note was someone I knew. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I jumped, startled, before reaching for it. The screen lit up, and I saw Miriam's name flash across it. My heart stopped. I almost didn't answer. I almost let it go to voicemail, afraid of what she might say, or worse, what I might hear. But then I remembered the feeling in her voice when she spoke to me earlier, the detachment, the finality. If she was calling now, maybe it was a sign that she was ready to say what she couldn't before. Maybe this was my chance to fix things, to understand what had really happened. I hit the answer button, my breath shallow. "Miriam," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but the fear in it was obvious. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't say anything. I waited, my heart hammering in my chest. "Miriam," I repeated, my voice breaking. "What's going on? Please, just tell me what's happening." Then, finally, her voice came through, soft and hesitant. "You need to stop looking for answers," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're going to regret it." The words hit me like a wave, but I couldn't understand them. What? What do you mean?" She paused, and when she spoke again, her words were filled with a finality that sent a chill down my spine. "You're in deeper than you realize. There's no turning back now. You've made your choice. And now, you'll see what happens next." The line went dead. I sat there in the car, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what she had just said. There was no turning back? What did that mean? What choice had I made? I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, frustration and fear bubbling up inside me. What was happening? Who was Miriam really? What had I missed? And more importantly, was I already too far gone to save myself? I sat there in the car, gripping the phone like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. Miriam's words echoed in my mind, repeating themselves like a chilling mantra. "You're in deeper than you realize. There's no turning back now. You've made your choice. And now, you'll see what happens next." I could feel the blood draining from my face. What did she mean by that? What had I done? What was the choice I had made? My mind was spinning, desperately trying to put the pieces together, but they wouldn't fit. Every thought seemed to lead to a dead end. The more I tried to find clarity, the more I sank into confusion. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life beneath me, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I was paralyzed by a sense of dread that gnawed at me from the inside out. My phone was still clutched in my hand, now silent. Miriam had hung up, and the line was dead. The air in the car felt heavy, like the walls were closing in around me. I couldn't even bring myself to drive, to follow the impulse to chase after her, to find out what was going on. I didn't know if I was afraid of her or the answers I might uncover. Maybe both. I looked down at the phone in my hand and noticed the time. It was past midnight. Hours had passed since Miriam had walked out of the house, and I had no idea where she had gone. My thoughts flickered back to that damn note. "I know what you did. It's too late to fix it now." It was as though someone had written it with the intention of making me question everything. But the more I thought about it, the more one thing became clear. Whoever had written it knew something. Something I didn't know. Something I needed to find out. I slammed the phone down onto the passenger seat and exhaled sharply. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I couldn't just sit here. I had to move. I had to find out where Miriam had gone, if she even wanted to be found. I couldn't let her slip through my fingers without understanding what had happened. I drove. I didn't know where I was going at first, but the road seemed to take me somewhere I didn't recognize. The streets were empty, save for the occasional cars speeding by, the streetlights casting long shadows over the pavement. My mind raced, but it wasn't until I reached the outskirts of the city that I saw something. A familiar place. A place that seemed out of place at this hour. It was a bar on the corner of a quiet street, the kind of place that never seemed to close, a dimly lit hole in the wall where people went to forget their lives for a while. I parked the car, sitting there for a moment, staring at the neon sign flickering above the door. Something tugged at me. Something told me this was where I needed to be. I got out of the car, the cool night air biting at my skin as I walked toward the entrance. The sound of muffled voices and clinking glasses filtered out through the door, but when I stepped inside, the noise seemed to disappear. My eyes scanned the room, looking for any sign of Miriam, but all I saw were the usual faces, strangers sitting at the bar, laughing and talking, but no familiar one. I approached the bartender, a woman with sharp eyes who seemed to be sizing me up as I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice flat. "I'm looking for someone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though the tightness in my chest betrayed me. "A woman. Miriam. She came here tonight." The bartender raised an eyebrow. "Miriam, huh? You're sure you got the right place? She usually doesn't hang around here much." I nodded. "She does tonight." She didn't ask any more questions, but simply pointed toward a dimly lit corner booth. My heart skipped a beat. There, sitting alone at the table, was Miriam. She had her back to me, her shoulders hunched, her posture rigid. Her hair cascaded over her shoulder, and her hands were wrapped around a drink, though she didn't seem to be drinking it. She was just staring at it, lost in thought, as if the world around her didn't exist. I hesitated before walking toward her. The fear I felt before had only grown in intensity, like the air around me had thickened, becoming suffocating. But I couldn't back down now. I had to know what she was thinking, what she was hiding. I took a deep breath and sat across from her. She didn't look up at first, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew I was there. "Miriam," I said softly, trying to keep my voice calm. "We need to talk." Her eyes flickered up to meet mine for a moment before she quickly looked away. "I don't know what you want me to say," she muttered, her voice flat. "You heard me on the phone. There's nothing left to fix." I felt a chill at her words. Nothing left to fix. What did that even mean? The Miriam sitting before me now was not the same woman I knew. She was colder, distant, her eyes filled with secrets that I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. "Miriam, please," I said, my voice cracking despite myself. "Whatever this is, we can fix it. Just tell me what's going on. What happened? Why are you doing this?" She finally met my eyes, but there was no warmth in her gaze. "You're too late," she said, almost in a whisper. "You had your chance. And now, there's no turning back." The words hit me like a slap, but before I could respond, she pushed her drink aside and stood up abruptly, as though she were finished with this conversation. "I didn't want it to end like this," she said, her voice almost hollow. "But you were never going to understand, were you? You were never going to see what was really happening." She turned to leave, but I reached out, grabbing her arm gently. "Miriam, don't walk away from me again. Please, talk to me. Whatever this is, we can fix it together." She froze, her body stiff under my touch. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes cold and unreadable. "You don't get it, do you?" she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't fix this, because you're not the one who broke it." My blood ran cold as her words settled into me. What did she mean? Was she talking about us? About something else? And just as quickly as she spoke, she turned and walked out of the bar, leaving me sitting there in stunned silence, trying to make sense of what just happened. I sat there for what felt like hours, the realization dawning on me. This wasn't just about Miriam. There was something bigger at play here, something much darker. And I was caught in the middle of it, trapped in a game I didn't understand. The cold night air seemed to close in on me as I watched Miriam walk out of the bar, her figure disappearing into the darkness. The words she had left behind clung to me like a thick fog. "You're not the one who broke it." What was she trying to tell me? What had I missed? My pulse hammered in my temples, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a deep sense of unease. It wasn't just the secrets Miriam had been hiding. It was the feeling that everything was unraveling. I stayed there, frozen in the booth for what felt like forever, the dim glow of the neon lights flickering above me. My mind raced in every direction, trying to piece together the fragments of the night. Miriam's strange behavior, the note, the phone call, and now, her cryptic words. I had been so focused on her, on trying to fix whatever was wrong between us, that I hadn't stopped to ask myself the most important question. What if I wasn't the one in control? I pushed myself out of the booth, my legs feeling heavy as I stumbled toward the door. I needed answers, but now, I wasn't even sure where to look. The confusion, the chaos, had reached a point where it was impossible to see through it. Miriam had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together, and now she was slipping through my fingers like sand. As I stepped outside, the air hit me like a cold slap. I glanced around, instinctively looking for her. There were no signs of her, no cars, no shadows moving in the night. She had vanished into thin air. The thought sent a wave of panic through me. Was she trying to get away? Was this the end? Or was there something more to her departure? Something I couldn't yet see? I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't let her go without understanding the truth. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers trembling as I dialed her number. The phone rang several times before the voicemail kicked in. "Miriam, please," I said into the phone, the words feeling like they were stuck in my throat. "I don't know what's happening, but I need you to talk to me. Please, I don't understand. Where are you? Please pick up." I hung up before the beep finished, the silence on the other end only amplifying the growing sense of dread inside me. I had no idea where she had gone. I had no idea what to do next. All I had were the pieces of a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. I needed a plan, something to ground me in the midst of this overwhelming chaos. I thought about the note, the one with the chilling message. I know what you did. It's too late to fix it now. I couldn't get it out of my head. Someone else knew something, someone who had been watching us. And Miriam knew them. She had to. There was no other explanation. The note wasn't just a warning, it was a signal. A signal that whatever Miriam was running from, it was bigger than both of us. I had to find out who wrote it, but how? Who could have known about our relationship, about the things we had shared? I stood there for a long time, staring into the night, the weight of the unknown pressing in on me. And then it hit me. There was one person who might know more than anyone else. I started the car, the engine roaring to life beneath me as I sped toward the address I hadn't thought of in years. The one place that could hold the key to everything. Edward's place. Miriam's boss. The man who had slowly, but surely, worked his way into her life. The one person she had been spending so much time with lately. The one person I hadn't been able to shake from my mind, even when I tried. As I drove, the streets blurred past me. Every mile felt like I was getting further into something darker, something more dangerous than I could have imagined. My grip on the wheel tightened as the familiar cityscape turned into something unfamiliar. The sharp angles of the buildings, the neon lights flickering in the distance, they all blurred together, and I could barely catch my breath. Edward's apartment was on the outskirts of town, tucked away in a quiet building that always seemed to be on the verge of decay. It was the kind of place that didn't ask questions, where people came and went without anyone noticing. The kind of place where secrets could be kept, buried in plain sight. I parked a few blocks away, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what I was going to find when I walked through that door, but I knew one thing for certain. This was where the answers were. I walked down the empty street, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the still night. The building loomed ahead, its windows dark and lifeless. I hesitated for a moment, a wave of doubt washing over me. Was I doing the right thing? Was this really the path I wanted to go down? But I couldn't stop. I had already crossed the line, and now I needed to know everything. I reached the door and rang the bell. The sound was sharp, cutting through the silence. For a long moment, there was no answer. I pressed the button again, louder this time. And then, finally, the door cracked open. Edward stood there, his face shadowed by the dim light behind him. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, his eyes cold and unreadable. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low, almost too calm. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "It's about Miriam." His eyes flickered for a moment, just long enough for me to catch it. The flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter without another word. The apartment was sparsely furnished, the kind of place you only stay in for a short time. There were no personal touches, no warmth. Just the cold, sterile feel of a place that hadn't been lived in. Edward motioned for me to sit, but I didn't take a seat. I stood in the middle of the room, waiting for him to say something, anything. "What do you know about Miriam?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Edward didn't respond immediately. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. And then, finally, he spoke. "I think it's time you learned the truth," he said, his voice low and deliberate. My heart skipped a beat as I realized that whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be something I wanted to hear. Edward's words hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. "It's time you learned the truth." My heart pounded in my chest, my thoughts racing, but I stood there, frozen, waiting for him to elaborate. What did he mean by that? What truth was he talking about? He led me to the small living room, gesturing for me to sit. This time I did. The last few hours had felt like a whirlwind, and I could barely process what was happening anymore. I was so caught up in trying to find answers, trying to understand Miriam's behavior, that I hadn't stopped to wonder if I was looking in the wrong places. Edward took a seat opposite me, leaning back in his chair, his gaze steady. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, with a sigh, he finally broke the silence. "Miriam and we've known each other for years. But recently, things changed. She started pulling away from me, and I didn't understand why. It wasn't just about work anymore. I was worried about her. I frowned, confused. But why would she pull away? You're her boss, Edward. You're supposed to be professional. He nodded slowly, his eyes darkening. It wasn't just professional. She came to me with concerns about her marriage, about you. She felt like she was losing herself in this relationship, like she wasn't being heard. I didn't know how to help her. I didn't know what to say. I sat there, processing his words. The shock of his revelation left me speechless. Miriam had been confiding in Edward? Had she really been that unhappy? I could feel the weight of it all, the realization that I hadn't been there for her in the way I thought I had. You've been blind, man, Edward continued, his voice soft but firm. She tried. She really tried to make things work with you. But you were too caught up in your own doubts, your own insecurities, to notice the cracks forming. And by the time you did, well, it was too late. Or so she thought. I could feel the lump in my throat. This wasn't the truth I had imagined. I'd been so focused on what was wrong. I hadn't even considered that I might be the one who needed to change. Edward, I never meant to hurt her, I said, my voice trembling. I didn't know. I thought everything was fine. You didn't listen, he interrupted gently. And that's the hardest thing for her. To feel like she's invisible, like her voice doesn't matter. The room felt still, the weight of his words settling over me. I had failed her. I had failed to be the partner she needed. The realization cut deep, and for a moment, I didn't know how to process it all. But it's not too late, Edward added, his voice softer now. She still cares about you. But she needs to know that you hear her, that you see her. This isn't over. Not yet. But you have to be honest with yourself. I sat there, lost in my thoughts. The road ahead felt uncertain, and the truth was painful. But I couldn't just sit there anymore, feeling sorry for myself. I had a choice. I had the power to change, to fix what I had broken. I'm going to fix this, I said, my voice filled with determination. I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to show her that I can change. I'll listen this time. I'll see her. Edward's expression softened, and he nodded. That's all you can do. But you better hurry. She's hurting, and she's not going to wait forever. With those final words, I stood up, ready to face whatever came next. I had no idea what Miriam would say, whether she would accept me back, or whether she would choose to walk away for good. But I couldn't let her slip away without trying. I drove back to the apartment, the world outside now seeming brighter, clearer. I wasn't sure how things would unfold, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. I could change. I could be better. And maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. I pulled up to the apartment complex, my heart in my throat. I hadn't been here in hours, but it felt like a lifetime. I took a deep breath before stepping out of the car, the weight of my resolve settling over me like armor. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Miriam, I called, my voice shaky. Please, open the door. This time, the door creaked open, and there she was, standing before me, her eyes red, but not angry. She was hurting, but I could see the hint of vulnerability in her that I had missed so many times before. I'm sorry, I whispered, stepping forward, my voice thick with emotion. I should have listened to you. I should have seen you. I'm sorry for everything. Miriam didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she stepped aside, allowing me into the apartment. I don't know if we can fix this, she said softly, her voice trembling. But I need you to understand that I can't keep living like this. I need to know that you're here. I need to know that you see me. I do, I said, taking her hands in mine. I see you. I hear you. And I'm not going anywhere. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that. There was a long silence, and then, finally, she nodded. It's a start, she whispered. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken. One step at a time. Together.